it's a personal pleasure to welcome our next special guest, Domingo Martinez. Folks, this is a special segment because he's going to tell us about his brand new memoir titled My Heart is a Drunken Compass. What a great title. And Domingo joins us right now, the National Book Award finalist, by the way, and New York Times best-selling author of The Boy Kings of Texas. Welcome to the show, Domingo. Wonderful to have you with us.
Good morning, Phil. Thanks for having me on.
Tell us a little bit about yourself before we talk about My Heart is a Drunken Compass.
To get it to make a quick synopsis, I'm a self-taught writer. I worked on my first book entirely on my own without any sort of academic help or peer support for close to 20 years, and finally got it published when I was in my early 40s, and it was immediate. It took a while. I mean, it kind of lingered on the shelf a little bit, and then I was nominated for the National Book Award, and then it was picked up and optioned by HBO, so it's completely changed my life around. And prior to that, I was a printer. I was working as a graphic designer at newspapers and a print shop here in Seattle. Mm-hmm. And now I'm writing for a living.
Publishers Weekly said it's one of the most anticipated books of the fall season of this year. What inspired My Heart is a Drunken Compass?
Mostly it's because I couldn't stop writing the first book. My editor just said, okay, I think like 550 pages is enough. It's turning into a paper issue. And I said, but I still have another great story. And so ultimately, it's a companion piece. It is. I mean, it is and it isn't. It's a standalone book. People who haven't read my first book can enter this book. And this one is a story about the inner dynamics of family within tragedies. It's actually, but the thing is that, and while it sounds harrowing and kind of dour, it's actually a very uplifting book when it gets to the end because everybody gets exactly what they wanted. Mm-hmm. And the first one, because it was a deep memoir. It was about growing up on the border of Texas and Mexico in the 80s. It seemed to hit a particular note because of the immigration issue and such, but ironically, I didn't intend it to be sort of a book about Latino and Hispanic experience in America. It was more just it was more populist than that, more generalized. It was supposed to be about just the immigration, just the experience of being an American,
Sure.
And I had kind of an interesting point of view because my parents were my dad was naturalized as a citizen, my mother was a citizen, and I of course was born in Texas, but it felt like we were all just fresh off the boat because of just how strange that little part of the United States is. It's the very bottom of Texas, South Texas.
Now, you have received many awards, especially for the Boy Kings of Texas. For folks who aren't familiar with that, just give us a brief summary, and then I want to get into some of the narrative that really is very, very compelling here.
Well, the Boy Kings, as I was describing earlier, it's a series of anecdotes because, like I said, I wrote it over the course of 15 to 20 years, never with the intention of publishing it. It was always just kind of like a one-off email that I would write at work when I was trying to woo some young lady, and of course it would never work because it's a bit too dour, too pathetic. But then I always kept them. I always kept copies of everything that I wrote, and over the course of of this time, I started to see sort of a narrative through line. And again, the subject matter is about my growing up on the border of Mexico and Texas in a city called Brownsville that keeps popping up on the news and never for anything positive.
I know it.
Yeah. Except I think the one positive thing so far is Elon Musk is deciding to devastate the an estuary because he's building some kind of spaceport there. But anyway, it's a very interesting part of the world because it's American. It's it's still a Texan city, but it still holds on to like a lot of its old world tradition and Mexican immigrant. I think it's like 90% Mexican American down there. And when I grew up there, it was like I was on kind of on a cliff edge looking into America, going, gee, I really want to go in there. And ultimately, that's what the book is about. It's about breaking away from a very alpha dominant grandmother. We were very maternally minded then. My dad's creepy craziness, alcoholism, and how it affected the family, and so anyway, these stories were they really they broke a trope because prior to this book, and this is kind of the reason why I intended the book to do what it did, was every story that I read coming out of that area or the southwest of the Mexican American experience, I just couldn't relate to it. It was too easy on the ideals of Mexicans and Latinos in general. We just want to work. We're very family oriented and Republican minded, etc. And that wasn't the case for us. That wasn't who I was. I grew up on Star Wars and John Hughes movies, and and I wanted what was in America. I didn't just want to come to America and pick fruit. That wasn't the stereotype that wasn't us. That wasn't who we are. Although there is a chapter in there where I do go to California and pick fruit.
Yeah.
But ironically.
But it is filled with profound honesty.
And that was a tactic. That was very much conscientious on my part. Basically what I did was I kind of went back with every memory that I could remember, and just really sort of kind of do sort of a side scan sonar and describe as brutally honestly as I could, the situation and sort of try to discover for myself why I was ashamed of it, or why it brought up negative memories, or why it had such an emotional impact.
Sure, it was bittersweet. Sure,
and that was the thing, but it's not entirely dour. And I think that's kind of my style, is that I'll tell a story, and this is it's a brutal and bad story, but it's also kind of funny, and I'll also I'll interweave the humor through it, and that keeps the narrative moving, and it keeps it buoyant. And at the end, you don't come away depressed. You come away feeling like you've learned something.
This is important, and so is your voice. We don't hear enough new voices like yours addressing these issues. Oh yeah, no, you must be commended. You're one of the pace setters here. A couple of quick questions about your titles. First, Boy Kings. That's interesting. Boy Kings of Texas. Of course, your best-selling National Book Award finalist for Boy Kings of Texas. Boy Kings, I'm interested in, and also Drunken Compass. My heart is a drunken compass. Can you explain both?
Of course. The Boy Kings of Texas. Originally, I did a lot of pacing over this particular title. I mean, the title alone took about a good 3 to 5 years, because I was thinking, walking around in my apartment going, Dirt Road Kings. No, that doesn't work. The back roads. No, that doesn't work either. And I really wanted to emphasize. But what I really was after were really huge, iconic nouns. Boy, King, Texas. These are all things that people immediately have an emotional response to. Mm-hmm. And the title is actually ironic. It's because I wanted to really kind of put across the idea that we were, my older, and I write mostly about my older brother, myself, and my mother. And I wanted to really get across the idea that we were being raised by people in Arrested Development. And so the Boy King, it's also based on a song called by Vicente Fernandez that we had grown up with, called El Rey, the King. And that was, and I opened the book with sort of a prologue and printing the lyrics and describing what the effect that the song had, and it absolutely in just exquisite detail characterized what was affecting my father and and generations of people like him, the machismo.
Yes.
And there were these men who thought such highly of themselves, and they would die by their honor, or make you bleed or themselves bleed, but they couldn't take care of themselves. They couldn't cook breakfast, they couldn't wash their own laundry, they couldn't they couldn't do very, very simple things.
Sure.
Yeah, but darn it, they were they demanded the best of everything else, and again, like I said, it was the title is ironic, and I was kind of surprised at how many people did not actually get that part.
Oh my goodness, it's a critically important part. Ladies and gentlemen, our very special guest is National Book Award finalist and New York Times bestselling author of The Boy Kings of Texas, and now tremendous praise for My Heart is a Drunken Compass by Domingo Martinez. Your family, you said, your dad was alcoholic. What kind of a dynamic did this throw into the spin of either normalcy or dysfunctionality? How did his alcoholism affect you personally?
It was so ubiquitous. Alcoholism was so ubiquitous in general in the barrio that I grew up in, and barrios were basically little villages within villages. In Brownsville,
sure.
That it never really stood out, and I do explore that quite a bit more in My Heart is a Drunken Compass than I did in Boy Kings. I mention it often in Boy Kings, and it's prevalent, and it's one of its themes. But oddly enough, people didn't ask very many questions about it then. They're doing it now because the book, how I describe the pair is, if Boy Kings of Texas was about family origin myths, Drunken Compass is about the consequences. And Dad's he's the most sort of prolonged character in redemption, because while I do introduce him and I talk about him quite a bit in the first book, and again, these books stand alone. But if you've read the first one, you'll know the characters a little bit more intimately for the second. And it's in the second one that we really see him deal with his alcoholism and understand the arrested development that he had, and he really makes an attempt at reconciling with his whole family, and he has, and that's one of the better parts of the second book, is that he deals, he's been sober now for 25 years or something, and it was just this choice that he made all of a sudden. Big signal, my mother left him. He's like, I'm gone. And he's like, but why? And then he realizes, he's the jerk all this time. And I describe in the book that, I never would have imagined my father capable of this type of discipline, but he made the choice once. He never backslid. He never, came off the wagon. And
was this part of his machismo? Do you think?
It was, and it completely changed his life. He doesn't speak to any of his old cousins, all his old friends, and he's he's not bitter exactly. He's just really he's upset with himself that he missed out on the first 40 years of his life.
Domingo, but there must have been moments of drunken love that he expressed in the family, if you can. See, you
I don't
get
think
it.
I could do it on radio. Dad was very emotional during those periods, and that was the thing. It's like you never knew what edge of the beer you were going to get, whether you were going to get
what edge of the beer.
right. If you were going to get the rage, or the crying,
the emotional roller coaster, huh?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what was the water we swam in. That was that was what we knew, and so it certainly had its effects on all those kids.
You must thank him and your mother for instilling in you and the DNA a gift for storytelling, because you are so good at it. You do mix, tragic with heartwarming. You do mix things that are, it just pops out of your heart, and yet hilarious at the same time. You have a tremendous knack for that. And I hope you're working on a new project now.
I am. Actually, I'm working on a pair of things.
Good.
Well, actually, what I'm working on is trying to learn how to survive in Hollywood. HBO optioned the first book, and so I'm working with one of Salma Hayek's producers, and her. She calls every once in a while, and that's always
right.
completely just tension building. And she's.
They live in their own. They have their own dynamics, their own swirl.
Absolutely, they have their own schedules. That, you don't hear from them for months, and all of a sudden it's like, could you take a call at 4:00 in the morning from Paris? It's absolutely, and the answer is always absolutely. Of course, get this opportunity to move the project forward. But we're working on an outline for a pilot episode for based on, and that was a tricky thing. The whole time we thought the option, the first book, which is memoir based. It's all history, and I really sort of beat myself up on trying to get it as truthful as possible. And then we read the contract from HBO, and it's all like material based upon. So they want fiction, and so it's like, but you realize you bought a book full of memories.
Right, right.
So I had to teach myself a completely different skill, which writing for television, which is just the complete opposite of writing narrative for.
Yeah, I know it. It's
terrible. It's awful.
Yeah, I know. No, I know it. It's a compartment of fiction that is very tough for most people to understand, and yet you, as a writer, are forced in a torturous situation at times.
Yeah, just completely rip it apart and put it back together with fiction. Yeah, I think it was Richard Price who said trying to write a screenplay out of your own novel is like trying to do brain surgery on yourself, and I always giggled at that too. I was like, "Wow, Richard Price, he's so smart." And now I know exactly what he's talking about.
You're paralleling. Oh my goodness! From the Boy Kings of Texas to a fabulous, wonderful "My Heart Is a Drunken Compass." Domingo Martinez. So are we going to see this on the screen or on TV at some point?
You'll see hopefully, fingers crossed. Boy Kings of Texas come to HBO. We're thinking to 2016.
Okay.
And there'll be elements of the second book in there too, but don't tell my agent that.
I won't say a word. Domingo, this is a very important story to teach, to get out, because the more that you tell your story about your family, the more it will open up other families, whether they're Latino or otherwise. There is a universal connection here, and you are to be congratulated for what you've been doing.
Thank you, Phil. That's very kind of you to say.
Welcome back anytime. Come on the air whenever you have anything new to tell us. In the meanwhile, we give you a huge radio hug and all of our very best wishes for your wonderful narrative in My Heart Is a Drunken Compass. How can folks get the book?
You can find it on Amazon or just a general web search. Domingo Martinez writer, or Boy Kings of Texas, or just by title. Yeah, it's there.
And we'll have it also at WBSM.com. Once again, our appreciation, all of the very best, and envelop your family with our gratitude as well.
Thank you very much. It was great talking to you today.
Likewise, Domingo. Take care, my friend.